Good afternoon, folks. So, uh, where were we in the last class? Okay. Uh, we were supposed to do non-verbal communication.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so this is the learning objective. I've sent you this lesson. I think you have taken a look at the slides and might have acquainted yourself with the different types of communication. Course. Uh, regarding, I think I mentioned you regarding the PDF of the reading journal. Since all of you have procured the books, you did, I suppose. All of you have got the books, and you're supposed to fill it up. You're supposed to fill the reading journal. There is a minute tracker of the journal where you have to mention every day as to for how long did you read the book, how many minutes or how many hours, and the date. You have to mention that. So minute tracker has to be filled up every day, and the rest of the thing can be done later on after you finish reading the book. So we presume that it must not take you more than 21 days. So the whole idea behind making you read a book is to infuse this habit of reading the book. Uh, so once you have done that, please fill out the reading journal and mail it to me. You can either edit it in the Word file if you want to, or you can just take a printout, write it, and scan it and send it, mail it, whatever is convenient. Uh, in the upcoming lab, I'm going to ask you the
Ma'am, you're not audible.
Ma'am, you
sorry,
you
yes,
were
sorry.
not.
Huh?
You were not audible for a few seconds.
Okay, okay. So I was talking about the reading journal, which you need to fill out after you finish reading the book. And there's a minute tracker where you have to, that you need to fill up every day when you start reading the book. You write the date, the time, and how many pages you could cover, whatever is written there. But the rest of the journal can be filled out after you finish reading the book, which you can edit it on a Word file and send it, mail it to me, or you can write it and scan the handwritten copy and mail it to me. Either of it is acceptable. But you cannot change the format of the reading journal. It should be the same. That was regarding the reading journal, and the title of the books I get to know in the next lab. So you are going to tell me the title of the book in the next lab. Now, talking about verbal and non-verbal communication. So, after reading this unit, you should be able to explain the difference between verbal and non-verbal communication, state its types, describe the importance of non-verbal communication, discuss the factors to be considered in choosing the method of communication, explain how to read nonverbal communication, and learn strategies to improve nonverbal communication. So, what is the difference between verbal and nonverbal communication? What is the difference between verbal and nonverbal communication? Anyone? Anyone would like to speak?
Verbal means by your mouth or verbally talking, or how can I say?
Okay.
Like
And
normal speaking
non-verbal.
to someone, normally speaking to someone, and that's a part of verbal communication.
Hmm. And non-verbal.
Letters, mail.
Okay. Okay. Uh, okay. So, Gurman, I think, yeah, most of us actually confused because of the terminology of using verbal, because we always associate verbal with something oral, oral presentation, verbally speaking. So that's where the confusion stems out. But verbal and non-verbal communication is differentiated on the basis of language. So, verbal communication uses language, be it spoken or written, because in writing also we use language. So the primary difference is in verbal communication we use language, and in non-verbal communication we don't use language and we still communicate. So that's where the confusion stems out. Yeah, I think I lost connection. So where was I basically?
He was telling about verbal communication.
Yes, so verbal and non-verbal communication differ, or we can distinguish between verbal and non-verbal as to one of them uses language and non-verbal doesn't use language and still communicates. So verbal and non-verbal communication uh, can be distinguished on the basis of use of language. Verbal uses language, so writing is also a form of communication where we use language. So the confusion stems out from the terminology verbal. When we talk about verbal, we feel that uh, it has to be verbally or orally communicated, uh, but I guess verbal communication is one where you yeah, I'm getting it. Where you use language and non-verbal, you don't use language. So that's the difference between verbal and non-verbal communication. So verbal communication can further be classified as oral and written communication because both of them use language as a mode of transmission. And non-verbal communication doesn't use language and we still communicate. So, uh, Kamal Nayan, are you there in the class? Kamal Nayan, are you present in the class? Kamal Nayan, very good, not there. Manish, Manish Kumar Pradhan, Manish Kumar Pradhan, excellent.
Netflix is
Ad-
on.
Aditya Narayan, Am I audible, folks? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
So I presume that Kamal Nayan and Manish Kumar Pradhan are not there were not physically present in the session. Kamal Nayan and Manish Pradhan, not there. Aditya Narayan, Aditya Narayan, very good. Alek Kumar Parida, Alek, are you there? You have a microphone issue. Alek, you have a mic problem. You need to read this out. Read it. Read the particular slide. Very convenient way, no? My mic not working, my camera not working. Seriously. Amitya Vikram, Amitya Vikram, are you present? Arre, Alek Kumar Parida, you're not supposed to go out of the house. Why are you out? You know the severity of the pandemic. Don't simply go out of the house unnecessarily. Just need to be a little cautious. Now, May is the peak season, and mid-May it's supposed to the 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 pandemic is going to rise. I mean, सबको कोरोना हो गया एक साथ तुम लोगों को सही है really. Oh, okay, okay. So, who is not outside the house, not COVID positive, still listening to the session and microphone working and can read the slides? Yeah, Nishikant, great. Please go ahead and read it. Nishikant, read it. Is the slide visible? Nishikant, is the slide visible to you? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
So Nishikant can't listen. Okay, Gurman, you read it. I guess you're the only one who's listening, and the rest 66 are simply present. I don't know if someone else is listening. Okay, Gurman.
Yeah, ma'am, listening.
Who else is listening?
Listening, ma'am. Listening. A lot of.
Yes, ma'am, we are alive.
Okay, someone whose microphone is working and who's listening, please read this particular slide. And that's a huge challenge for online classes. You never know who's there and who's not. Please read it.
I'm reading it.
Yeah, please.
Verbal communication, oral communication, any form of communication where we use spoken language is called oral communication. Face to face communication, speeches, group discussion, interviews, or mere interaction are part of oral communication. Written communication. The form of communication which uses the written language is called as written communication. Reports, letters, emails, proposals, books, user manuals are examples of written communication.
Thank you, Gurman. So, verbal communication is classified into oral and written communication. Oral communication is spoken communication where you speak and communicate, and written communication is a form of writing where you write and communicate, but in both cases, you use the language. orally communicating something. Be it a group discussion, face-to-face communication, anything, you use language. So that's the basic distinction between between verbal and non-verbal communication. That should be very clear to all of you. Now, non-verbal communication communicates without using language, through body language and other paralinguistic features. Now, can you tell me any other forms of non-verbal communication where we don't use language and we still communicate?
Have sign languages.
Signs.
Okay, yeah, great. Sign
Ma'am,
language.
Braille.
Braille, yes, yes, Braille, yes. Any other form of communication? Anything. Anything which communicates without using language,
expressions,
right?
facial
Expression.
expression,
Morse code.
Hmm?
Morse code.
Okay, Morse code. Morse code, yes.
binary,
Sorry,
binary digits,
couldn't get you, Sudhanshu. Could you repeat yourself?
binary digits,
Uh,
Ma'am, computer
okay,
language,
programming
zeros and
language.
ones.
Uh,
That will go in
yes,
verbal
non-verbal
communication,
program.
yeah, because that uses a language and written.
Okay, I can't say whether need to find out. Zero and one. I'm not sure. Any other form of
Eye contact.
eye contact? Okay, and and
Body language, body movement,
hmm,
posture.
hmm. What else? How about colors?
Yes, ma'am.
Colors.
Correct. Colors.
Do
Symbols.
color, yeah, symbols. Do colors communicate something?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am, traffic signal,
Traffic lights.
traffic lights,
the
yes.
military uses flare guns to communicate. Fire
Correct.
symbols, sequence of
Yeah.
fire and flare guns to communicate with each
Yes.
other.
Yes.
That's the Morse code.
No, no, that's not Morse code. I don't think that's not Morse code. Morse
Ma'am,
code is
it's
something
just a
different.
code used visually.
Huh?
Ma'am, it's a form of Morse code used visually.
Is it? I don't know.
Ma'am, it sends the signal in same way. Dashes and dots.
Okay. Okay. What else?
Ma'am, frequency.
Elaborate.
Ma'am, in frequency can be transmitted, given to some kinds of people's mind and that kind. Actually, it is generally seen in animals like dolphin and whales.
That is like sound, similar to sound. That is,
Ma'am, the
Sound.
But
Yeah.
no
but we
language.
cannot hear that.
tone of the voice.
Yes. Tone. Yes. Tone, very, very, very important. Non-verbal communication, tone. Okay, so all this bells, uh, horns, colors, flags, so many other things. Now, everyone uses non-verbal communication all the time, whether deliberately or not deliberately, but we keep using non-verbal communication. Now, it depends on seeing and analyzing physical movements also.
Ma'am, stickers or emojis are non-verbal.
Sorry? Yes,
Stickers and
Subun, you were.
emojis.
Yeah, emojis, exactly. Keep using so many of emojis, and you keep doing that while in the text box all the time in the lab. Yeah. Yes, emoji is correct. Now, why is nonverbal communication important? Or why are we studying nonverbal communication? That's because it's a more credible way of expressing our emotions and thoughts. Why? Because this is natural and spontaneous. Nonverbal is natural, it comes naturally to us and it is quite spontaneous. So this is more credible. This is more honest and truthful than verbal communication, and people tend to rely on non-verbal communication more than other verbal communication for meaning, because this is more honest and truthful. So when you are talking, when you are conversing, they would also listen to your words, but more importantly, people would also gaze your non-verbal communication, how you are projecting yourself through your body language, your tone, and other movement, other non-verbal gestures, and they try to see whether your words, whether your verbal message mm, is. Is symbolized through nonverbal communication or not. And people uh, tend to take meaning or grasp meaning from the nonverbal communication more than your verbal communication, because that's a more reliable and trustworthy way of conveying meaning, because we don't we don't manipulate. I mean, we can't manipulate quickly non-verbal communication. So if you are you're saying something, say for example you say, well, the class or the lecture was interesting, but then you keep yawning and you keep looking at your watch every time. Uh, so it definitely means that you're probably you're saying something, but you don't actually mean that, because and people tend to believe your non-verbal communication more than your verbal communication because it is more honest and truthful. So it's very important to master the art of NVC, because it can significantly improvise our ability to communicate with others. Now, nonverbal communication is important because it gives us valuable information about a situation. So, why NVC is important? Because it gives us valuable information about a situation as to how a person might be feeling, how someone receives information, or how to approach a particular group of people or a person. Because we get to know, or we get to sense, we get to understand them from their non-verbal gestures. So, paying attention to and developing the ability to read nonverbal communication is a very important skill that you can leverage at every stage of your career. Now, how does nonverbal communication act, or why do we really need nonverbal communication? Number one is that, or how does nonverbal communication uh, helps? Number one is that it supports your message. So when you're having a conversation or participating in a meeting or engaging in conversation, the nonverbal cues can emphasize emphasize the content of your message. For example, when you're using hand gestures to indicate the importance of an idea, so it corroborates your verbal message and it supports your message. Number one. Number two is it communicates messages. So even if you are not using verbal messages, your non-verbal communication can completely communicate with others. So if you want to stand up for solidarity or you admire and agree with someone, you can do that by nodding your head or and that communicates the message. So non-verbal communication can stand by itself without really taking the help of verbal communication. Number three is it non-verbal communicates your intention. Now that's important. So people gaze for NBC to understand your intention. Your body language is a great reflector of your intention, whether you are uh, intentionally doing something or unintentionally. But NBC never lies. Nonverbal communication never lies. So people may pick up nonverbal cues about you being dishonest, unengaged, excited, or aggressive. It also conveys feelings. So you can also use non-verbal communication to show your feelings, like you're disappointed, you're happy, you're contented. So this conveys your feelings and emotions. It communicates your intention. And that's important. So people always look for non-verbal cues to understand your intention, whether what you say is right or wrong, whether you're trying to be dishonest with them, whether you're not engaged in a communication, in a conversation, or whether you're trying to be truthful. Everything is quite accurately conveyed through nonverbal communication. It also offers support. So, nonverbal cues are also a great way to show support. Whether it's a simple smile or pat on the back, action speaks louder than words. It also showcases your personality. So, body language and offer friendly touches. So that reflects your personality. It indicates a desired action. So NBC also suggests if you're inching towards the door to indicate your desire, it indicates that you want to leave the room. If you're raising your hand, you might need to offer an idea, or you're putting your hand out, you're meeting someone new. So it indicates a desired action. And most importantly, NBC de escalates tension. So using a calm tone of voice, open body language, and directive gestures may help resolve a difficult situation. So an open and optimistic body language and a very soothing tone of voice can resolve conflicting situations or can resolve head-on collisions. Now coming to body language. When our physical behaviors as opposed to words are used to convey a message, this is called body language. And this can be done through movement of hands, gestures, postures, facial expressions, eye movement, touch, and use of space. How is space used? How does space come in as as non-verbal communication? Is Yeah, how is space used as a non-verbal communication? Anyone who's listening, who's there in the class? Space. Okay, we're going to find out how is space used as body language. Movement. So, uh, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Movement is the way you move your arms and legs, such as walking quickly, slowly, standing, sitting, fidgeting, and all this convey different messages to onlookers. Sitting still and paying attention in a meeting conveys respect and attention. Okay? So, what does it convey? It conveys respect and attention. Postures is, see, most of our communication occurs uh, while we are standing or sitting. So, one interesting standing posture involves putting our hands on our hips, and it's a non-verbal cue that we use subconsciously to make us look bigger and show assertiveness. So, when we are putting our hands on our hips, what does it suggest? It suggests that we want to show our assertiveness, and we are a little overconfident and commanding. Now, when the elbows are pointed out, now this prevents others from getting past us as easily and is a sign of attempted dominance or a gesture that says we are ready for action when the elbows are pointed out. Uh, this is not difficult. You just have to understand, have to know what these postures basically mean. So I don't think it's quite difficult. Now, in terms of sitting, when you're sitting and if you're leaning back, it shows informality and indifference. And straddling a chair is a sign of dominance. But some also see this as insecurity because the person is protecting the vulnerable front part of his or her body. So, this is also protection. It also symbolizes protection because we're trying to protect our vulnerable body part. And leaning forward shows interest and attentiveness. So if you're leaning forward and listening to a lecture with your raised chin and to the lecture, to the conversation. Now, the way you sit or stand can also communicate your comfort level, professionalism, and general disposition towards a person or conversation. So, you might slouch your shoulders if you feel tired, frustrated, or disappointed. So, slouching shoulders means either of it. You're tired, not happy, you're frustrated, symbolizes that. While gestures vary widely across communities, they are generally used both intentionally and unintentionally to convey information to others. So, if you're displaying a thumbs up, you're perhaps trying to communicate confirmation. So, or you might also say that you feel positively about something. So, thumbs up means confirmation or feeling positive about something. Now, look, listen to this. Please listen to this very carefully. You might need this. Uh, the emblem, adapters, and illustrators. Now, there are three main types of gestures: adapters, emblems, and illustrators. Adapters are touching behaviors and movements that indicate internal states typically related to arousal or anxiety. And they can be targeted towards the self, objects, or others. So when we subconsciously keep clicking pens, shaking our legs, or we are engaged in adapters. Now, in regular social situations, adapters result from uneasiness, anxiety, or a general sense that we are not in control of our surroundings. And it is in these situations that you use adapters. Adapters are touching behaviors and movements. So, whether you're clicking a pen, shaking your leg, or randomly moving here and there, very quick paced movement here and there. Um, all these are adapters. And this suggests that you want to release the excess energy that you have. And why do we usually get into adapters, using adapters? Because we might either feel uneasy or we are anxious about something and we are not in control of our surroundings. And in these situations, we use adapters. Now, public speaking students who watch video recordings of their speeches will notice the nonverbal adapters that they didn't know they used. It could be scratching your head or twirling hair, fidgeting with fingers or hands. All this, they are considered self adapters. And cough, clearing throat and coughing are also manifestation of internal self. We are fidgeting with the mic or with a pen or with a notebook or paper, playing with them, playing with an object. Or paperweight on the table. That's object focused adapters. But when we are scratching our head, twirling our hair, or coughing, clearing our throat in between, these are all self adapters. That's adapted. I think it's clear to all of you. So if you don't ask, if you don't come up with queries, I assume that it's clear. Now that's adapted. We then go on to look what emblems are. And then one of you can sum it up, the differences. Now, emblems are gestures that have a specific agreed on meaning. So we all agree on a particular meaning of that gesture. For example, OK sign with the thumb and the index finger connected in a circle. Okay, this is an emblem, and all of us uh, have an agreed upon meaning that this means okay. But this agreed on meanings might have different these might have different meanings with different culture. That might be different, but then in a particular cultural setup, we have an agreed on meaning with a particular gesture. So emblems can be still or in motion. still is when you're circling the index finger around at the side of your, for example, when you're circling the index finger around the side of your head, then it means that we're trying to say that he or she is crazy. That is
We can say that
uh,
emblems are basically gestures.
all the three are gestures. All the three that we are talking about are gestures. Adapters, emblems, and illustrators are gestures. Three main types of gestures. Adapters are ways are typically related to anxiety or anxiousness, and they are touching behaviors or movement. So when you're clicking pen, when you're coughing, when you're scratching your head, when you're anxious and you don't know you're moving randomly from here and there, you want to release your energy excessively. That means that's an adapter. You're trying to adapt yourself to a situation which is beyond your control. You're getting anxious, so you're trying to adapt yourself by making all these possible gestures. So that's adapter, and all three of them are gestures. And public, yes, public speaking students, they make all kind of adapters while they are on stage because they are nervous and they need to calm themselves out. So they can either be scratching or uh, fidgeting with fingers or hands, or might be swaying. So these are all adapters. Clearing throat intermittently, coughing intermittently. These are adapters. Emblem is when you make a gesture and all of us know the meaning of the gesture. We have an agreed on meaning in the same cultural setup. For example, when we say he or she is crazy, what do? We say that he is crazy, and then we go on circling the index finger around the side of our head, meaning that he or she is crazy. That's an emblem. Or okay, when we join the index finger and the thumb, that's an okay sign. And this is an agreed upon meaning. We agree with this meaning. So a particular cultural setup have a particular agreed on meaning with particular, which they associate with certain emblems, certain gestures. And those gestures are called emblem. Now, illustrators are the most common type of gestures and are used to illustrate the verbal message they accompany. Uh, Remember when you talk on the phone and the other person is not able to see you, you're still making some gestures, hand gestures, facial expression. You know that the other person is not able to see you, but you still, because you make them unconsciously, subconsciously. They don't typically mean anything, but then they accompany your verbal message. Or they don't have a particular meaning of their own, but you subconsciously use them. And
Ma'am,
these are
singers do that.
yes. These are largely, all of us do it. When you talk on the phone, you please notice the kind of illustrators you use. You know that the other person is not seeing you, but you still make some gestures, and these are involuntary, subconsciously you make, and they are natural. They are seemingly natural gestures, and they flow from us as we speak. So all of us, yes, including singers, we, common people, everyone. So they don't have a specific meaning, and but they vary in terms of intensity and frequency based on the context. So if you're having a very high-pitched conversation, too animated conversation over the phone, then you're likely to use a lot of illustrators. So it all depends on the context. If it's a very animated conversation, very high-pitched conversation, then you use a lot of illustrators, lot of gestures, which go along in the flow of your conversation. So illustrators go along with the flow of our conversation. It doesn't particularly mean anything, but then uh, then they accompany our verbal message. Okay, and they are more subconsciously used. They are involuntarily used because they seemingly come very natural to us. So I think these three concepts are clear to all of you. Adapters, illustrators, and emblem. Clear or not clear? Yes, no? Mihika, are you listening? Are you there? Mihika, you have an issue with your microphone?
No, ma'am. Sometimes there
No.
is network issue, but now it's fine.
Okay, Mihika, I think this is clear to all of you? Yes, no?
Yes, ma'am. It is clear.
Okay. Mihika, will you read this? Body language?
Yes, ma'am. Body language. The way you sit, stand, walk, or move communicates about your feelings. Look straight while walking. Do not look sideways or down or at the ceiling. Do not walk with dropped shoulder. Do not slouch. Avoid dragging your feet on the ground while walking. Avoid sitting cross-legged with one foot ahead of the other. It gives unnecessary illusion of ease. Do not sit on the chair. It reflects laziness.
Thank you. So I think I don't need to explain this to you, do I? I think it's all very clear. So avoid sitting cross-legged, especially when you are surrounded with people around. Prefer not to sit cross-legged because what happens is one of your feet will be pointed towards the person sitting beside you, and that's considered bad body language. And I remember a little anecdote where uh, Jawaharlal Nehru and Jinnah and everyone, they were having a meeting, and Nehru subconsciously sat cross-legged, pointing his feet towards Jinnah, and Jinnah took an offense to it. You know? Jinnah was not very friendly, did not have a very friendly disposition towards Nehru, but then this infuriated him because this was considered bad body language, and he took an offense to it. So don't sit cross-legged, pointing your feet to someone else sitting beside you. That's considered inappropriate body language. Uh, so yes, this doesn't require much of an explanation. Uh, okay, now strategically using eye contact is an extremely effective way to communicate your attention and interest. Now, looking away from someone and at the ground or on your phone may convey disinterest or disrespect. So, when someone is talking to you, look them at their eyes. Don't look here and there, or don't look on in. Don't look at the ground or on your phone because this conveys disinterest. It shows that probably you're not interested in what the other person is saying, or you're not respecting them. Uh, Now, eye contact. Eye contact serves several communicative functions. And what are they? Mm, Achyut, are you there? Achyut Chaudhary, are you there, Achyut?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please read this. Eye contact.
Eye contact serves several communicative functions ranging from regulating interaction to monitoring interaction to conveying information to establishing interpersonal connections. Aside from regulating conversation, eye contact is also used to monitor interaction by taking in feedback and other non-verbal cues and to send information. Our eyes bring in the visual information we need to interpret people's movement, gestures, and eye contact.
Thank you. So eyes are very important part of body language, entire body, because they serve lot of communicative functions, and ranging from regulating the interaction, how you want to regulate the interaction is conveyed through your eyes, to monitoring the interaction, conveying information, and establishing interpersonal connection. So they serve very important communicative functions, your eyes. So, aside from regulating conversations, eye contact is also used to monitor interaction by taking in feedback and other nonverbal cues. They also bring in the visual information we need to interpret people's movements, gestures, and eye behavior, eye movement. So, eyes serve a lot of purpose, and they are one of the major indicator or major conveyor of your communication. So eyes play a major role because they monitor, they regulate, they convey information, and most importantly, they help in establishing interpersonal connection. So our eyes bring in the visual information from our audience that we need to interpret. They also monitor interaction by taking in feedback, and they regulate conversation. And when you look someone into their eyes and talk, uh, it suggests that you are not deceiving them, you're being respectful towards them. So eyes play a major role. And I guess we'll continue with body language in the next class. Okay, and just find out this for a general query, you know, as to whether binary codes are verbal or non-verbal. Find this out. Whether 0 and 1 can be considered as verbal communication or non-verbal communication. And please tell it to me in the next class. Yeah, will you do that? I think so. Okay. So I'll see you in the next class with the answer to this question.